Hi everyone, this is Dan, and this is a art piece of Guts from the manga Berserk, the Golden Age Chapter 4 as it's written here. Yes, I did draw this, and I'll talk about it later, but this isn't really the point of the video. It's just a nice background to look at. The real point of the video is talking about American comics and how to kind of save American comics. In this particular one, I'm going to talk about something that happens a lot when American comics and the failure, I guess, of American comics currently. It's not selling well. Many companies are going under. Things the market is continually contracting year after year after year, as your boy Zach kind of points out in some of his videos. And that is the manga example. A lot of people say this, that, oh, American comics should be more like manga. And I kind of want to explore that a little bit in this video. So I do also want to mention another thing. If you haven't subscribed to this channel, you could be really nice right now and hit that subscribe button. Just thought I'd throw that a little earlier in the video for people who just kind of only watch or listen to the first couple of minutes. I also want to say I did a review on the Berserk Deluxe Edition Volume 1 a long time ago, but I've been doing Berserk videos. They're just not on YouTube due to censorship. Berserk is an extremely graphic graphic and violent and very, very adult manga. So I don't put it on YouTube because I'm probably going to get my head taken off, and I'm kind of small right now, growing, but really, really tiny channel. So don't really want to get my head taken off over small stuff like that. So for those of you who do or are interested in Berserk and want to watch more Berserk videos, they're going to be on BitChute, BITCHUTE.com. Just type in Unqualified Comics when you're in the search engine, and you'll find me there real fast. And then make sure you turn off your not safe for work setting if you are going to go through it, and all the Berserk videos should pop up. You can also look at the playlist, and there should be a playlist on Berserk. Anyhow, this video is a YouTube exclusive, a long video essay of something that I'm pretty passionate about because I love both. I love comics and manga, but I think some things need to be sort of mentioned when we talk about manga and comics. And that is, first off, let's just talk about manga, right? First off, what is manga? Manga is it's just Japanese for comics, right? It's just comics produced in Japan. That's it. In fact, I actually kind of dislike using the term. I do use it because that's how you get people to recognize whatever you're trying to explain or talk about something. But I dislike that it's used so much rather than just calling it comics. Berserk is a comic made in Japan. It's an adult comic. Naruto is a comic made in Japan. One Piece is a comic made in Japan. We kind of create this weird aura about these properties by calling them manga, right? And it kind of frustrates me because it creates division and segregation of these, as if somehow Berserk is either less than or greater than anything made in America or France or Britain or anywhere in the world, South America, Mexico. Comics are made all over the place, right? And while the Japanese products are fantastic, and some of them I think are some of the best that graphic media can get, I think to segregate them by saying the word manga and having their own thing separate from everyone else, I think is detrimental in the long run for everybody. That's just kind of my rant and my feelings on it. I think they all should be treated the same. That's why I put them in the same point. I know that they're different audiences, but in my personal opinion, I think that's wrong, and they shouldn't be different audiences. They should be the same because, again, manga is just comics made in Japan. That's it, right? So that it doesn't even have to be going right to left like everybody complains about. If it's made in Japan, it's a freaking manga. But anyhow, off my soapbox right here, I want to talk about manga and the sort of the culture of manga, in Japan. One of the things that people don't realize about manga is the vast majority of manga are creator-owned properties, right? So Kentaro Miura owns Berserk and all the characters within Berserk, right? Hirohiko Araki owns JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. I forget who's the guy. I think it's Tite Kubo owns Bleach, and and Akira Toriyama owns Dragon Ball, right? They're all creator owned. None of these people, belong to some larger overhanging company. There are a few that do, but there isn't like a Marvel DC presence where people are kind of like, you go to work for a manga company and you write Naruto, or you draw Naruto. There are freelancers or young talent that work for these creators. Like Kentaro Miura would have people working for him and doing backup, penciling or inking. He definitely needs it because, as you can tell by this art piece that you're seeing right now, he puts a lot of freaking detail in his artwork. This is actually one of his earlier works, and you can see like, oh my god. I was drawing this and I was like, God, how much cross-hatching do you need, Miura? It was kind of frustrating, honestly, just drawing it. It ended up looking pretty good, but at the same time, I walked away and was like, holy crap, this guy's insane. Anyhow, the other thing about manga, right, is the team is kind of hidden, right? Every now and then you'll see a manga that mentions it, but the editor, the backup inkers and pencilers, letters, none of that is mentioned. It's mainly the guy who runs it, right? The Oda for One Piece, right? That's the big deal, right? The other thing about manga is, for the vast majority of manga, and they're all in weekly anthologies or maybe monthly anthologies, usually weekly. Like a good example, really popular right now, is My Hero Academia. I think it's in the Jump right now, but you'll take a notice that he releases, a chapter pretty much every week. It's kind of an insane schedule. So they have like hardcore crazy deadlines. It's also extremely competitive. Anyone who's been to a Barnes & Noble manga section or any bookstore with a manga section, you'll see like, oh my god, it's like starting to become like several shelves thick of manga. And that doesn't even scratch the surface of how much manga there is. There are literally big libraries in Japan just dedicated to these ongoing series. It's freaking massive, dude. Just huge. And manga has only really been around for like 30 or so, 40 or so years. It really started, like, I think, growing heavily in popularity from the 60s and growing on up. But whereas American comics have existed since the 30s. So it's crazy to see how much of it is out there. Other thing about manga in Japan is everybody reads it. Men, women, children, girls, boys, the elderly, businessmen, everybody reads manga. It is not a subculture in Japan. It's not like, oh, nerds, weebs. No, that shit doesn't exist in Japan. Everybody reads manga. It's like books. It's like the newspaper, right? You just read it. It's entertainment. And so it's essentially Japan. Manga is still normie in Japan. Or I should say comics, right? I got to stay saying that, but I have to continue saying it because people, otherwise they won't recognize it. Compare that to America, where comics are like very much, a subculture. If you read comics, you're kind of weird. That's like the American thing, right? And it's very sad because, if you go to a Marvel movie, you're freaking a normie, but if you read a Marvel comic, you're a weirdo. But it's kind of the difference in the culture, right? Another thing about manga, right, is it's decompressed. A lot of people have mentioned that before. A lot of like Western writers have mentioned manga as an influence for their decompressed style. Like I think Bendis and Morrison are like examples of that. And what's funny about it is it's kind of untrue. It's kind of a lie because there's only certain mangas that are really decompressed. Like everybody mentions Akira, and I wish they would stop mentioning Akira. I like Akira, but Akira's a little overrated. Even though it's one of the first manga, it is by far not even the best. Or even, I wouldn't even put Akira in like a top 10 list unless you're just an old school, like old manga nerd. Like there's a lot of better stuff than Akira, like Apocalypse, space, cyberpunk kind of stuff. But man, a lot of manga is actually, uses a lot of traditional storytelling. When you go through Naruto, when you go through One Piece, all the really popular ones, they have no problem using thought bubbles. They have no problem using narration. Some of them are a little more dialogue driven than others, and that's very dependent on the creator. But there's no problem with long narrative and exposition in manga. If you ever read JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, for the love of God, freaking Hirohiko Araki is super wordy, especially in his dialogue, which, to be fair, is a trait that all manga has. For some reason, the Japanese really love doing exposition through dialogue. What you'll notice in both anime and manga is, like, a lot of times you'll have characters, having long conversations explaining what's going on and their thoughts about it and stuff like that. And at first it can seem kind of crazy and weird. Like, man, dude, these guys are talking a lot in a fight scene. But the reality is it adds a lot of depth to a story. And you can see by the popularity of anime and manga, the technique doesn't hurt the profitability of the product, right? So, it's kind of funny to see 1980s techniques from American comics utilized by the Japanese to such devastating effect. It's pretty hilarious, right? Because these type of storytelling techniques have been abandoned by American comics. For the most part, everybody now has to be like, oh, it's a visual medium. I have to have these sweeping scenes of one character running through a city and nothing really happening for 4 freaking pages. Like, oh God, give me a freaking break, dude. Whereas like in manga, like, yeah, you'll have a fight last forever, but there's so much drama and stuff said and thought in that one fight that it still drags you and entertains you a hell of a lot more than just 4 pages of art with nothing being said, which is kind of the standard for modern comics nowadays. But yeah, another thing about manga is manga's very innovative. They do a lot of crazy stuff all the time because it's competitive. Everybody's trying to come up with a new thing. You have mangas for like literally every subject you could ever dream about. They're much more creative than American comics. But despite being innovative and creative, manga is still very structurally sound. You rarely read a manga that's going to use like some weird ass storytelling technique, right? They're usually, they have very structured, very, very clean dramatic structures. They're not necessarily the standard, like Western style dramatic structures, but you can follow a plot fairly easily in a manga. And that's kind of one of the interesting things about manga, even though they are decompressed to a degree in that they don't necessarily tell a full story every issue. What happens in issues is very linear in their storytelling, that it's not difficult for any reader to follow along in a manga. One of the things about mangakas is they're kind of at the mercy of the reader. It is a very competitive and very, it's a very cut and dry environment. If you don't, interest the reader, then you're done, right? There's no real room to be artsy fartsy. You have to create a story that will interest a lot of people, which means to a degree you have to hold structure. You can't be too weird or esoteric in your approach. That doesn't mean you can't be creative. You have to be creative because people have kind of seen things over and over again. Shonen is what it is. It's, people have seen a lot of shit. So you need to come up with something that's going to interest people. But at the same time, you can't be freaking weirdo, art colony, bullshit. It's got to freaking be approachable from anybody, anywhere. Other thing about manga that I think most people, even comic book fans, will agree on is the emphasis on action and emotions. So in the case of shonen, right? Like, everybody knows Dragon Ball Z has these long, ongoing fights that go on freaking forever. And almost, the vast majority of manga in the category of shonen and seinen, which is, older male comics, the action is pretty drawn out, but the action's really good. If there are like innovators in the realm of art when it comes to fighting and actions and showing just exciting scenes, you got to give it to the Japanese. They really kind of mastered it. For the most part, fight scenes and action scenes in graphic media, like if they don't, if they aren't influenced or they take stuff from manga, I don't know what to say, right? Like it really doesn't get better than a lot of the action that goes on in manga. They really do a good job. And the same thing is true for emotions too, right? There's a huge subdrama or subgenre of manga called shoujo and, manga for girls and women. And there's a lot of drama in it. There's emotional, emotional things going on, crying, relationships, all that kind of stuff. The stuff that, women tend to like a lot. And they're just, the Japanese, despite their simplistic art style that typically, so in the shoujo genre, you typically have a more simplified art style that's kind of easier to draw. It's mainly more about the sort of character drama and conflicts that go on and sort of relationships. But they draw such a great array of facial expressions and emotions in their character that even if you're not really into it, you kind of like can easily be drawn into it. And it's like a soap opera, or you get sucked in and you're just watching or reading in this case, like hundreds of chapters of it. So great stuff right there. It just goes to show you their understanding of what people like and their honesty in it. They're not trying to go out and have an agenda with their products. They're trying to sell it to everybody, right? Men, women, children, elderly, whoever, right? Other thing is people will note American comics typically have color. Color has always kind of been a thing with American comics. Western comics in general too. The Europeans typically like color as well. Manga is notorious for not having color. It's actually kind of rare to find manga with color. If you do find it in color, it's usually like, special editions or just one art pieces or one-offs, right? Like just the creator, like Hirohiko Araki from JoJo's Bizarre Adventure will just draw one art piece and then color it, right? But they never really do like an entire issues that are in full color. In fact, when you do see that, it's usually from like American or Western translations. Like I think there's a colored version of Akira that's extremely rare by Marvel's Epic line. But stuff like that, right? You will not usually see color in manga. It's usually black and white. And that's not a creative choice, by the way. That's a cost choice. Manga is typically on a weekly, run. And black and white is simply cheaper than full color. You have to hire a colorist to do color, right? Another thing is the majority of manga is printed in anthologies. Which is sort of interesting because anthologies suck in American comics. They rarely sell well. And you usually have like 100 people involved in some stupid anthology on Kickstarter. It barely gets funded. Nobody freaking makes a profit. It's a total freaking wash in America to do an anthology. But holy crap, dude, are the anthologies huge in Japan. Like they sell a lot of Weekly Shonen Jump, a lot of Young Animal, and a whole bunch of other anthologies. And if you've ever picked up a Shonen Jump from Japan, it feels like a freaking phone book, and it is on the cheapest paper you can possibly find. It feels like while you're reading One Piece or Naruto or whatever, that the freaking the anthology book that you got is gonna like literally rot in your hands while you're reading it. And then, it kind of makes sense in that it's about distribution for the Japanese, right? They're a small country with everybody living very close to each other. They just want to get the stuff out every week and give it to everybody. And it's kind of a callback to the early days of comics when comics were done on newsprint, right? Anybody who, has collected comics, from the olden days, oh man, dude, like the intoxicating smell of newsprint. Holy crap. Oh man, newsprint's dope. Sorry, it freaking ruins art and it forces you to have a very undetailed style, but goddamn does newsprint feel really good and smell really good. And yeah, so that's manga in a nutshell. Sorry, taking 18 minutes to explain manga to people. But getting to my point, what can American comics learn from manga? So I'll try to go really quick here. First off, manga is more than Akira and Dragon Ball, all right? It's more than decompressed storytelling and endless escalation. All right. It's a very deep field. There's a lot of different stories. It's not just, oh yeah, I'm just going to power up for 4 issues. No, dude, manga is very deep and it needs to be, treated with some seriousness and consideration and not just, weebs. But the other thing about manga is it shows that creator-owned is the way to go. That's where we need to go. We need to get away from Marvel DC. I know I love the X-Men, but you know what? The X-Men, they're dead, right? They're Jonathan Hickman has killed them. A bunch of really idiot writers and editors over the last 20 years have killed them. They're just not that cool. All right. The Ultimate X-Men were the X-Men in the X-Men animated series, which is based off of Chris Claremont's X-Men from the 80s. That's it. Those are the X-Men. After he got kicked off because of Jim Lee and Bob Harris being freaking pricks, the X-Men pretty much slowly died little by little. Same is true of all the other characters. Superman, Green Lantern, Batman for the DC people, or Spider-Man, the Avengers, etc. The characters are dead, all right? There's nothing you're really going to glean from these new writers. And even if they go back, they'd just be repeating the same story that came before them that was done better by somebody else. There's just not passion in it. And there never will be, because why would someone put so much effort into something that is owned by a big company that is going to, make a shitload of money off of your effort, right? It doesn't make sense. So creator owned is the way to go. And that's kind of where the Comicsgate, movement kind of makes sense. Creator owned indie comics is the way to go. More passion, more creativity, more drive, more profit for the creator, right? Other thing about manga is a return to traditional storytelling techniques. There is nothing wrong with narration, thought and inner monologues, right? Now, the way you might want to deliver it or execute it might be different. You may want to be nuanced or smart about how you do it. And manga does have some pretty smart techniques for doing thought bubbles and narrations, but there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with words. I freaking hate this quote from Alan Moore, where he says, "Oh, there's an optimum amount of words and thought and bubbles in a page." Like, shut up. No, there's not. All right. People freaking buy more books than comics. All right. Watchmen will never sell as much as Harry Potter, as much as Alan Moore fans will scream about it. Right. So stop that. You can write and put, long exposition and narration, but there better be meat to it. All right. We're not reading poetry. So if you're going to put a lot of words into something, what is the purpose and what are you trying to do? It goes back to editing and, traditional storytelling techniques. The other thing is action and drama. Comics need more action and more drama. That stuff is what people read it for. They want to be entertained, right? Characters sitting around eating food is not entertainment. There's no action. There's no drama. Give me action. Give me drama. Something has to happen every issue, right? The other next thing is the fusion of character and conflict-driven storytelling, right? Everybody has seen dramatic structures with conflict-driven, but there's also a character-driven dramatic structure. And I talked about this in my first One Piece video. And that is, you kind of have to fuse the two storytelling techniques together, both the East and the West, because character-driven storytelling has a dramatic effect in how you relate to the main character of the story, because it's so focused on them and their inner conflicts and them going about. And then conflict-driven is just a classic storytelling technique that everybody recognizes and everybody can get into. So the fusion of those storytelling techniques is going to create better comics. Other stuff is just more logistics. If you cannot generate your story for a low cost, like manga does with their phone book anthologies, then maybe what you need is, to increase your value. Put more story and more art in your book. Give them more story and art per dollar. Simple as that. If you're going to force them to pay a lot of money, then you better give them a good deal. None of this, 20 pages of fucking nothing happening for freaking $5.99. For the love of God, that needs to stop. The other thing, competition is good, right? More people being competitive, talking a little smack. My comic's better than yours. Oh, your comic sucks. Blah blah blah. I think that's not negative at all. I don't think that's bad. I think that's good. People should feel competition. They should want to do better than their competitor, right? Now, obviously, you don't want to make it personal, but competition is not bad. Competition's good. And then other small things that I've kind of doodles that I kind of wrote down is so we need to find a way to return back to the mainstream. I don't know if it's retail or online. I personally like the Amazon model. I think any way that we could figure out to generate distribution so that people can get a comic literally in 2 days, right? I think that's the way to go, because honestly, I don't see a future in local comic shops. I'd love to see it, but I just don't see it. There's just no demand, and most comic shops they're either they either have to evolve by turning into something completely different, or they're becoming more like record stores. And it's not bad, that stuff will stay around, but as far as growth, I don't see it growing to being back to being mainstream and being everybody likes this stuff. Other things is low cost options. I'm not sure about this one, because the only way you really drop cost, in my opinion, is you go to anthologies where everybody kind of shares the cost into one big printing, or you go to digital, and digital freaking sucks. I'm not a fan of digital in its current state right now. And then the last thing I want to do, which is sort of the Donny Cates point of my video, is don't worry about pirating. There's literally nothing you can do about pirating. There's nothing you can do, right? Like, you or I right now can type into Google, DuckDuckGo, whatever you want to do, and you can go read all the comics currently out or all the manga currently out for free. Nothing anyone can do. You can send a bunch of threats to people, all this other stuff, but people will find a way, and they will find a way to pirate your shit if they want to pirate it. What you need to do is you need to make your product so damn good that even if they pirate it, they become so passionate and immersed in your story and in your characters and in your book that, when they do get money, they will buy it just because they want a physical copy of the book, right? That's what happens to manga. Manga is heavily pirated. The Japanese are notorious for being really confusing in their business decisions. Manga production is actually really crappy. I freaking hate manga books. They're, it freaking sucks. It's low quality. It's a smaller print version. If you have money, why do I want to have, this manga that I could read online for free printed on cheap ass fucking paper? When I want shit like the freaking Berserk Deluxe Edition, full size, nice freaking quality. That's what I want, because you're not going to buy the product if it's for free online. You're going to buy the product because you like it so much that you want a physical copy. And that's really where comics have to go, is that the product has to be so good that people want to buy it physically. Because digital is not it's just not a good business model. Eventually, what happens is if anyone is curious about it, they're just going to read it for free. And if they like it, they'll buy it. If they don't, they won't. So you have to kind of accept that about digital and pirating and just kind of move on from there, right? Focus on making sure the product is good and the profit will follow. I know that sounds crazy, but it's kind of the truth as it is right now. Anyhow, that's it for this video. Holy crap, this is the longest video I've ever made. Sorry about that. This turned into a rant. Let me talk about this piece of art. So yes, this is traditional art. I penciled and inked this. And oh my God, man, this was a pain in the ass to draw. I am a huge fan of Berserk and Kentaro Miura's artwork. I've been dreading the day. I'm doing a review of this chapter on my BitChute channel. I dreaded the day when I would do this because I made it a standard of my channel that if I'm going to review a comic or a manga, I'm going to do a piece of artwork from that comic and manga, because otherwise I can't truly evaluate art if I don't at least see what went into making it, right? My goodness, does Miura puts a lot of detail. Like, this is his earlier work too. This isn't even like his modern stuff, which is even crazier. And yeah, man, a lot of cross-hatching, a lot of small detail. If you're wondering how I got that small detail in, it's a Copic multiliner 0.03 black. That is the only way you're going to get that detail in, because it's freaking fine as hell. Ended up looking pretty good. I kind of like it for the most part. If you want to see a video of the actual piece of artwork on paper, I'll have that up on BitChute later today. But anyhow, that's the video. Let me know if you liked it. I know it's been really long here. Holy crap, half an hour. I felt like this was something I needed to get off my chest and talk about, because I think it's important, at least for those of us who are worried about American comics. So yeah, if you like this video, please hit the thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. It's a really fun channel. I talk a lot about reviewing old comics, good manga. I mainly do things that I like, and then once in a while I'll do other stuff. I do video essays every once in a while. I always do, as of the beginning of the Path of Secret Wars, I have been doing a panel from any comic or manga that I review. Which is kind of fun to see me fail epically at doing art. And then I also do a lot of indie comics and cover Comicsgate books as well. But yeah, if you like the channel, please think about subscribing. If you do subscribe, hit the bell for notifications. And if you have any comments on this video essay or this piece of artwork of Guts from Berserk, leave them down below, and I will see you next time.